So generally the trust factor and the growth of legal systems has been a little slow. So people look for different ways to find a model where trust cannot be a barrier. So in this model, the person who goes to the house is a person known to that villager. So when he takes an order without giving the product, they trust him or her. And when the product comes, it moves through. So people are finding very interesting ways to do such a thing and move across.
Okay, I'm going to start winding up now because I need a glass of wine. But sorry, I have one more question here because Jamie's been very quiet over there. Absolutely. Jamie just decided to join us rather than speak, but Jamie is the MD of a fashion brand called Religion. It's a very fashionable brand, very edgy, even in this country. What I'd like to ask him is, when he's taken his brand to India and he's shown the young population the product there, that the responses that he's got.
Yeah, it's been very interesting because I've been 3 times now, isn't it, Mike? I think 3 times. So the first time we went to do a show there, and I was standing around at the show and fielding the level of interest that there was in the brand and in the products, and it was quite a clash of interest. The focus was on, well, what is this stuff anyway, and why is it so expensive? And we really need it to be half price or a third of the price in order for it to be in any way relevant to our public. This was the reaction of the people who were coming through the trade show. A year later, I went to do the same trade show, did the same exercise. It was a better presented stand, so the product was perhaps easier to understand, easier to see. And it was very noticeable that there was a sharp divide at that point between the young people who were in the show. A lot of them were working on other stands, I think, or they were students. They were kind of 18 to 21, that sort of age. And you could see them approaching the stand from some distance away, and they were, like that, and being drawn in. And they immediately got it. They immediately understood what the product was. They immediately understood what the attractive nature of the product was. And it is very edgy apparel, even for the UK, we're quite edgy. And so there was this huge divide between the younger people who were completely understanding it, but still very confused about price. I engaged everybody in conversation that came on the stand, and one of the questions I asked was, well, what would you expect to pay for this T-shirt, which you love so much? And it was far from equivocal, the answer. They would say, perhaps they might say 800 rupees, they might say 1,200 rupees. And I said, looking at because I'd already looked at the market and seen what the prices were out there, I said, well, what would you think if it was 2,500 rupees? Oh yeah, that would be all right. So there was no real fixed idea of what something was worth. It seemed to be quite transmutable as to what the real value might be. And it was largely, well, where would you see it, I suppose. So it was more about where they would encounter this product than what the intrinsic value of it would be. And then coming to a couple of weeks ago when I was down there, going back to the second time, the other side of the divide was the older people, by which I mean, I suppose 30, 35 plus, business people, potential investors, from my point of view. And you could see, there was just nothing. There was nothing going on. They just didn't get it. They didn't understand it. Maybe it was cool. Maybe it wasn't. Who knows? Whatever it was difficult for them to grasp how it might be commercially viable. So there was this big divide between the people that would actually be the customer and they were getting it totally, and the people that should be investing and they were not getting it at all. Wind on a year, and again, a big shift. The people with the potential to invest were suddenly, it was as if they'd thrown caution to the winds, if you like, or they'd just decided, well, it works well over there, so therefore it will work here. It's just a matter of time. And I think what everyone's been saying here is absolutely true. And I've seen this in other markets. I've seen it in Russia. I've seen it in China. It is all about the teaching power. I think it was you that was talking about the teaching power of the internet, whereby if you don't show people what's out there, they don't want it. And if you do show people what's out there, they do want it. And it's really as simple as that. And suddenly there is a belief that, okay, it is kind of expensive, but we're sure that it's going to work somewhere. You know, somewhere there are going to be some people out there that are going to want this stuff. And I don't know if it was a coincidence, but in the interim period, the value of the rupee has fallen a lot. So when I first went, it was 60 rupees to the pound, then it was 85, and now it was 100, 110, something like that. And so the actual product, the base product of a T-shirt, I mean, I based most of my research on the price of a T-shirt because it's very, you know, a T-shirt is a T-shirt to some extent. And so the base price was about 800, and now it is quite easily 1,500. And yet the retailers see that they're still selling T-shirts at 1,500, whereas they would have been selling it at 800. And I think that that's gone some way to dispelling the fear on the price of things. If people want it, they're going to go and buy it one way or another. There's still a difference between 100 and what our T-shirts would be, I think. But it seems to have broken some sort of glass ceiling, or a perception of a glass ceiling that was certainly very, very firmly embedded 3 years ago, was somewhat still embedded in the people with the 2 years ago. It seems like it's just gone. It's gone. We'll give it a try. Big change. Big change.
Thank you, Jamie, because there's one thing I wanted to say, but I wasn't quite sure how to say it. James just pointed at it. There's a big disconnect between a lot of the people that make the decisions in Indian business and the ones that know the right answers. And they're not the same people generally. And the panel today, as you see, are actually quite young. And they're the companies you want to work for. It's actually the companies that are run by younger guys. Or younger guys or girls, because they kind of get the fashion thing and the business thing. Where the older generation get the business thing, and they all think their daughters go off to their parties wearing these big clothing. As soon as they walk out the door, they take it all off, put their party stuff, and they go and party. So, anyway, there's one more question, and then we do have to wind up.
With a small international brand, I do children's ethnic clothing. Originally designed it for expat South Indian community. And when I was out there, I went into a couple of the department stores, and it's really taken off in India. But with an online presence, how do you base your pricing? Do you need a universal pricing? At the moment, the website is in GBP. But we sell wholesale to India. And recently, when we launched our Facebook, 90% of my likes are from India. And they're all wanting India pricing on the website. So do we do two separate websites, or how would it, or do we just have the one pricing across for all the markets?
My experience has been each country should have their own website. So it should be rupee pricing to GBP pricing. But are you saying that the pricing on GBP would be, if converted into rupee, would be different? Higher, lower?
It's much lower in India. Domestic pricing is a lot lower.
But don't you worry that a person from here will go and buy from India? Yeah. Yes. Yes.
In Regent Street, and they've just done a pound for dollar conversion. So they expect me to pay 50% more for a J. Crew t-shirt than I could in New York. As a consumer, that annoys me. And, you know, Hollister done it. The American brands are particularly bad at doing it. And Abercrombie, Hollister, J. Crew, Gap to an extent. It's annoying as a consumer.
So actually, the internet has come and disrupted the whole MRP as a concept. So in the whole electronics industry, in India, there's no concept of MRP, they call it MOP. So it's market operating part. And I'll do a very, very interesting case study. The biggest retailer in the country called Chroma, and the biggest retailer in the country has become Flipkart. So I was the CEO of Chroma, and we were in the panel together. And he said, so much, but customer comes to my store. He sees my salesman experience. He uses my Wi-Fi, my air conditioning, and all this for the car. The reason is that because for Chroma, total amount of online sales this year is 6% because we started off late. So now it's the tracking mouse between 94 and 6. You see the one reach 94. My guess is that he really understands the type of mouse, otherwise he will be bored. It has even I know that they cannot do that. If you're not a customer, your bills are done for that.
Getting to that stage where I'm not quite sure what this is.
Also adding some examples, the brands that are desirable in the Indian market are more the ones that have uniform pricing in the Western world, wherever they come from, America or Europe, and similar in India. So in the current last 3 or 4 year scenario, Diesel and Superdry are the two most desirable young fashion brands because all of Hollywood, not Hollywood, Bollywood was wearing them, and the youth want to follow them. So the Bollywood designers and stylists would pick it from Europe or America, mostly London, Milan, wherever they buy from. Youth sees it and then they want it. But in contrast, if you would see Lee and Wrangler, they've been licensed for a long time. And people who are actually spending money, the upper middle class and upwards, they all say that their drivers wear Wrangler and Lee jeans so they wouldn't be seen dead in them. That's because they've adapted too much and gone too cheap. So that's something you need to be aware about. Where do you want your brand to stand in that marketplace? That's why it's just, yeah, I mean, unless you want big numbers and you're not bothered about in every different country I have a different brand image, that's a different scenario. But that's why I named the 4 brands, for you to get an idea. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Again. Two things. In your packs from the UKIBC, there's a little form, feedback form. If you don't fill it in, Tara will shoot you. Secondly, could everybody grab their chairs and put them to the side, and then we can have some drinks and some networking. Thank you very much.